Good evening, Assalamu Alaikum, and welcome to Sports Extra. I'm your host Ahmed Nawaz. Tonight we're going to be discussing something which has been gripping all the world now, and I think it's an issue that needs to be addressed very, very seriously now, and it is of course racism, and racism especially in sports. You know, the death of George Floyd, African American, who was killed by a white police officer in the United States. He was an unarmed African American who was killed at the hands of police in the United States. Ignited protests all around the world entitled the Black Lives Matter movement, and since then they have been gripping all parts of the world. They've stressed not just to America but even towards Europe, in terms of we've seen protests in UK, in France, in Russia, in Canada, all over the world. And I think this has raised a very serious issue where a lot of sporting personalities have come up raising their voice on this issue as well, and also some personalities have come up who have actually been targeted by racism themselves as well. They have also detailed and they've made public their accounts as well, where they have faced racism through sports as well. And this is something that really needs to be addressed on various platforms now, and this is something very, very important for all of us to understand, because there needs to be a fine line when it comes to this, because the world is a global village. Acceptance should be there. Of course, when we talk about sports in general, then it connects people from all over the world, and this is what needs to be done. We're very, very, very lucky to be joined by two guests tonight. First of all, we have with us on the Skype call as well, we've been joined by football journalist. He's known all around the world, of course, writes a lot about football. We're going to be discussing with him on the very same issue, is none other than Mr. Samindra Kunti. Good evening, welcome to Sports Extra. How are you?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me. Such a beautiful here from Belgium.
So have been joined in studios by someone who's actually been targeted by racism at the same time as well once he was playing, and now he's obviously a global advocate for this as well. None other than, of course, a professional cricketer that he has been. He's represented the UAE, played a lot of county cricket, also a certified coach as well, and of course a cricket analyst, none other than Mr. Syed Abbas. Assalamu Alaikum, how are you?
I'm good, Walaikum Salam. How are you, Ahmed?
I'm very well, good to have you on the show. Of course, we're going to be discussing all of this, but the team of Sports Extra have got a detailed report on the incident of racism that has been gripping all over the world. So let's just take a look and then come back with the show. The ruthless killing of George Floyd, an unarmed 46-year-old African American, on 25th of May initiated a massive uproar around the globe. Sports celebrities sentimentally reacted and raised their voices on the murderous act of white police officer. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the all-time leading scorer of basketball history, has emphasized that over the past few decades, black people have been pushed on the edge. The six-time champion of NBA said that the police force killed peaceful black people at an inordinate rate only because of the complexion that they held. Michael Johnson, the four-time American Olympic gold medalist, shared similar thoughts on the matter and mentioned that he was hopeful that the current protests will lead to a change. He said that anyone who understood true fairness was fed up with the current circumstances and sincerely advocated for change. Spanish tennis legend Rafael Nadal also shared his thoughts on the problem, saying that all peaceful white people are against any racism. However, he was dismayed that the protests were used as a scapegoat for looting stores and shops. The winger of England national team and for Manchester City, Raheem Sterling, corroborated the protest as well, stressing that racism is a disease which is being fought by the protesters. Alain Saint-Maximin, the French winger for Newcastle United of the Premier League, was also deeply moved by the murder of George Floyd. He said that this case touched everyone and that this does not have to be repeated again. Many sports celebrities have physically taken part in the protest as well to voice their concerns. Anthony Joshua, the current heavyweight boxing champion, took part in a protest held in the UK and remarked that racism is a virus and was a compulsion to act as a vaccine to end it. Right, there you have it, a detailed account of whatever has been happening around the world in the last couple of weeks, obviously due to the killing of George Floyd in the United States, and of course the backlash that has come out, and of course the movement entitled Black Lives Matter. Now, like I said in the introduction as well, that sports unfortunately has also been the target of racism, not just in the past, but also in the near present as well. And there have been countless incidents all around the world as well. We'll be discussing that obviously as well. But Samindra, if I come to you now, and if we talk about football in general, then a sport which is enjoyed all around the world in large numbers. But we must say here that we cannot ignore the fact that racism in football has also been a very serious problem since quite some time now.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for having me on the show. I think even in pre-coronavirus times, it was quite clear that football, unfortunately, has been affected on an almost endemic scale by racism. I think earlier this season, the case of Belgium striker Romelu Lukaku in Italy was a key example, and Lukaku, remember, he's one of the best strikers, not only in Belgium but in Europe. And it's interesting, he's an interesting test case in the sense that he doesn't get treated well in Italy, but he also doesn't get treated well here in Belgium. It took up until the point of him becoming a leading scorer in the Premier League for Belgium fans to accept him as one of their own, as one of the leading strikers of the Belgian national team, who, as you remember, finished third at the World Cup in Russia 2 years ago. So that Lukaku case, which is a very recent one, just goes to show how problematic racism in football is.
It is definitely, but like we mentioned, Samindra, that it has ignited in the past as well. We still remember the very ugly incident of the World Cup final where Zidane was sent off, shown the red card because of his headbutt as well, where he was targeted on the basis of his faith. And so far we've seen such incidents all around the world. What do you think more can be done to make the game more exclusive, obviously more inclusive at the same time, bring everybody on board and actually eliminate this? Because obviously if we go to the league structure of football, we see so many nationalities playing under the banner of a certain club. All of them are like a family, but once it comes to targeted racism from the fans, then it really becomes disappointing.
Yeah, it's the million-dollar question, basically. But as you pointed out rightly yourself, racism is everywhere in sports and has been for a long time. We've been talking about Lukaku. You mentioned Zidane in 2006. But the other day I was reading an interview with Tommy Smith, who is obviously very famous from the 1968 Olympic Games, and his raised fist, demanding freedom. So basically we've been talking and discussing racism in sports and in football for more than half a century. But what has happened? And I think there are two fundamental issues. The first issue and question is, our sports organizations, our clubs, is FIFA, is UEFA, are they prepared to take racism in football and in sports seriously? And then the second issue, which is obviously closely related, is that you can't really expect sports to solve a problem that belongs to society. I mean, football is a reflection of society. And I interviewed John Barnes a couple of months ago in Liverpool, and he made the point, this exact point. We've been talking about this for ages, for decades, but the problem is within society, and football alone cannot solve this. So, for example, when a fan abuses Raheem Sterling, obviously this is very bad, but this is a reflection of society. So does football want to solve the problem? That's one issue. Is there a willingness? And FIFA is a key example here. In the age of FIFA President Sepp Blatter, he launched an anti-racism task force in 2013, but that task force was disbanded in 2016 under the new and current FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, and FIFA said at the time that the task force had completed its mission. So that's a clear signal that FIFA, under its current administration, is not taking racism seriously. And last week FIFA launched a social media campaign uniting a number of global football stars who were wearing T-shirts saying no to racism. But that feels at this moment in time like a cheap PR campaign. So are institutions in football willing to take it more seriously? That's the first question that needs to be addressed. And then secondly, obviously, we need to look at how racism in society itself can be solved.
Right, absolutely. Now, coming to Syed Mohammad Owais, now, Owais, cricket is also another sport that has been targeted immensely through racism. There have been very, very ugly incidents in the past and in the present as well. We've seen accounts now coming up where Darren Sammy has also gone public with what he suffered as well. And we cannot just say that it's limited to just the players even, but even to the support staff and umpires and everybody else.
See, I mean, especially about the racism which has been going on right now in the world. I mean, it's not a new topic. I mean, it's an old topic. I mean, and remember in the sporting event, I mean, it's just not it's just not the FIFA, even the UFC fights. I mean, even the cricket, especially because I'm related to the cricket chapter.
Yeah.
It's just not your face or the color. Unfortunately, even your religion sometimes gets under scrutiny. I mean, I was talking
in the way. Yeah.
It gets into the way because remember, it's just not the cricket players in between them. It's even the crowd too. I can quote an example. Remember when Inzi was playing against India? It was back, and when he was coming back to when he was out and he was coming back to the pavilion, someone called us the other name of him. I don't want to repeat it, and there was a fight over there. Then the sledging even goes more worse when it comes to your, I would say, to your face, when it comes to your faith and the religion too. It goes more about that. The sledging has gone through because we have been through that. I mean, I don't want to name the country's name, especially. It's really tough to play, just not with the country. I mean, it's really tough to play even when you're playing against the crowd. I mean, you don't know how the crowd is going to be attracting, how the crowd is going to be actually be with you. I mean, are they going to be friendly or are they not going to be do that? I mean, you have seen in the previous matches too. I mean, it was, remember, you can go back, you have that Harbhajan versus Simons, the famous issue. In India, I mean, remember whatever happened on. Then even you had one of the issues was between Ahmed Shahzad and Dilshan. Then you had the incident between, like you rightly, Hashim Amla incident was very famous. If you remember on Dean Jones one. So there has been things, and again I would say there should be a law implemented by just not the cricket body, the bodies of sports. I mean, they need to bring in one law over here. One thing was really good. I remember the crowd was chanting something against the Australian team or England team, and 2 matches were banned up in India. If you remember, even the India versus South Africa match, when the crowd started to throw some bottles, that stadium was banned for 5 to 6 matches or 6 months. I mean, so the sporting structures, I mean, they need to bring in one law which needs to be implemented for every sport.
And there definitely needs to be harsh penalties imposed. I think there is no doubt. And let's just look at a couple of historic events that have been there, in which racism has been highlighted and it's been brought in front of the world to see how it has tarnished the world of sports as well. We've got another report courtesy of a team of Sports Extra just to let you know a bit more about how racism has targeted sports. Let's just take a look and then come back.
Racism in sports has been a prevalent issue throughout the world, and in particular, racism towards African, Americans and Asians has been especially bad over the course of history. The Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commission released a report in 2007 stating that racial abuse and vilification is commonplace in international sports in places such as Australia, Europe and America. British footballers have long experienced racism, with several incidents in the recent memory. In a Euro 2020 qualifier match in Bulgaria, the match was stopped twice after Bulgarian fans shouted racist chants, with 4 being arrested soon after. Incidents in 2018 rose by 67% in professional games, a sharp increase compared to other types of discrimination. Discrimination especially targeted at referees of color by players sent off due to bad conduct. In 2006, former Australian cricketer and commentator Dean Jones called South African cricketer Hashim Amla a terrorist on 7th August 2006. When Amla, who is a Muslim with a full beard, took a catch, Jones was heard to say, The terrorist gets another wicket. Jones made the comment during a commercial break, but the comment went to air live in South Africa as its broadcast had not been interrupted. Jones was fired as a commentator and later apologized to all concerned. In 2019, a Pakistani player was banned for 4 matches for racist comments on a player. A spectator in New Zealand directed racist remarks at English bowler Jofra Archer due to his colour. While it's important for high-profile players to use their voices to speak out on these issues, it is not enough. We must challenge governing bodies to step in and put a stop to the hate. It is time for the executives within these bodies to act and implement change.
Well, there you have it, some details about such ugly incidents that have taken place, not just in the world of cricket, but sports all around the world as well. Samindra, if we come back to you and if we look at another aspect that we've seen through sports, it's not just racism by the crowd or anybody else. It's also the concept that has been there because games tend to get more aggressive. There's a lot of aggression being put in. The concept of sledging that takes place between individuals, between opponents as well. That is also something very disturbing that has targeted the game itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So it also starts with the players themselves. Though I must say that in a professional context, sledging and the discrimination and the racism at the highest level, it is still there. It is mainly in the heat of the game, which doesn't, of course, make it better. But I think you mostly see this problem at the grassroots level in youth football, in the under 21 games. So there is a very big need to have campaigns at schools and in football clubs and in sports clubs around the world from a very, very young age. You have to educate young sportswomen and men. And it comes essentially, as I said before, I think it comes down, and in a large part I agree with your studio guest. It's about, we have to challenge the governing bodies to take action and to implement rules and laws and regulations that actually really punish racism and discrimination. But I just want to add that it also comes down to education, because you can have a legal framework to punish racism and other infringements, but that's sort of, you are not preventing it. We need to focus on education, I think, if we want to root out this problem in the long term.
Absolutely, the legislation needs to be done at the same time as well. Abbas, so many incidents that were highlighted in that report as well, not just in terms of cricket, but in terms of football at the same time as well. We've seen this transcending to multiple formats. Even if you just talk about cricket, it's not just on the highest level, but boils down to this level as well, where, like you mentioned, that sledging also becomes a tool for racism at the same time as well. You've suffered such an incident yourself in the past as well, I'm sure. Like we talked about this before the show as well, and we know that history at the same time as well. But unfortunately, what could have you done?
See, Ahmed, I told you one thing. If you just remember on, you can quote an example, especially of the South African team. Remember it was unfortunate to say, you never had seen the cricketers from the black cricketers in the South African team, and it has been law passed, I think so, 7 or 5 years back, where you need to have at least 3 to 4 black cricketers must in the South African team, and many of them criticized that. If you remember, in the African country, in the South Africa state, many of them criticized that. And it's just not about the international level. Like I mentioned you, it's even at the national level. It's even at the club cricket too. The club football, it can be the lower level to see. Yeah. If we say one thing that we need to correct the international level, the body needs to step up, that might be a wrong step, because you need to go till the schooling cricket or the schooling staff over there. You need to go beneath to the ground level where it starts on. I told you, I don't want to quote an example of a country. I've seen many clubs where we have played on, the overseas cricketers. Many of the players from that country, they don't even love to sit with you. They don't even love to have a lunch with you. Because you belong to a different faith. There has been things with us. So these things need to be stopped. See, every religion says one thing, that even our religion says one thing, that first it's a humanity, then it's a religion. I mean, you need to serve the humanity over here. So these things need to, the international bodies, the human rights, they need to step up to the ground level. They need to work on that. It's just not that you correct the international level status.
Right, I'll come back to this definitely, Abbas. We're going to go towards a very short break, but stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sports Extra with me, Ahmed Nawaz. Now we're discussing, of course, racism in sports, how it needs to be tackled. I've been joined in studios with Syed Owais, and through Skype we've been joined by Samindra, Kunti, football journalist from Belgium. Samindra, final take that you can give us on this whole scenario now. We've talked about, talking about this on the grassroots levels, telling people how to stay away from this and create the difference, draw the line at the same time as well. Also talked about organizations, how they can do it as well. In terms of strict penalties and legislation, what would you like to say that should be done so that an example can be set throughout the world that this is something that has no level of tolerance?
Yeah, I think the obvious choice when it comes to football is obviously when racism does occur in stadiums or during matches or during practice or even at grassroots level, is to simply walk off and abandon the match. Now, some critics and pundits are against such a measure because you are in effect punishing all the fans in the stadium. You are punishing all the spectators for a few people who sadly voiced their racist expressions. But given that this is such an important topic, and for too long we've all been talking about it, for too long nothing's really happened, for too long sporting and football governing bodies have basically watched on the sidelines because they don't really have an interest in it. It's not their core business, apart from, the occasional PR campaign. So I think it would send a very strong signal when there is a football game or at whichever match that level is taking place, that the match is simply abandoned, and that perhaps those fans are also prosecuted by the police and banned from the stadium. That seems like a reasonable thing to do to me, to really show and demonstrate that this is a serious issue.
Right, definitely. Thank you so much, Samindra Kunti, senior football journalist, talking to us from Belgium. It was great having you on the show. Right, you heard what Samindra had to say. Owais, final thoughts on this as well. We can do it through legislation, we can do it through awareness, we can do it through imposing penalties and fines and bans and everything. But at the same time, the media has a very, very critical role in highlighting these issues as well.
So, the way Samindra Kunti right now, explained about football, it was a fabulous thing. He was right on the point that you need to show some strong, I would say the FIFA now needs to step in up over here. For the cricket, again, I would say they can actually have some kind of, the cricketing bodies, they need to sit and talk to each other. They could even ban the nation who goes, who players, even the crowd taunts something, even if it's on the religion, even if it's on the faith or face or anything, they need to be banned up. The nation needs to be banned from the ICC. They need to go through that. If you go through the strict rules even for the grassroots level, then these things can actually get settled for you. It's a tough job, but it can get settled for you, and especially the media. I would say the media needs to be positive over here. They need to actually create some awareness. They need to pick this issue so that the international sports federations, I mean, they can wake up and they can see this as a serious thing.
Definitely, Rekha. Abbas, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. That's all we have time for. Of course, once again, we're going to say that racism is something that is a very, very, very serious issue, and it really needs to be addressed, like my guest mentioned as well, through legislation, through creating awareness, and relevant world bodies should also take up a very serious stance when it comes to racism and say no to racism. And like I said, there is absolutely no tolerance for racism in the world in any form, whether it's through sports or any other entity as well. At that note, we're going to say goodbye from me and the entire team. We're going to catch you tomorrow once again. Stay home and stay safe. Follow the SOPs given by the government. It's goodbye for now.